Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Disruptive Dialogue. My name is Thomas Cotton and I'm your host. Today we have our grand finale show, which includes all the ladies who have been in the first 6 shows. They are amazing. They have shared a lot of their life with us and the things that they have overcome, the challenges they faced, but the inspiration that they are. And I'm so grateful that we have them all back. Today we have with us, joining us, Jessie Mabry, Daphne Patterson, Lucretia Doyle, Lisa Humans, Walisha Wilson, and Dina Dickerson. If you don't know their bios, go back and watch their original podcast where we lay out their bios. I'll also include a link in the chat so you can look at their bios. But today we're just going to jump right in to some of the things that we want to talk about. We've heard their experiences. We want to capture their hearts, though, on how we can better support women, mothers, and caregivers who've been impacted by the justice system. I also want to discuss the areas that they've all shared that they've overcome is trauma. We all deal with trauma. And so their inspiration of overcoming traumatic experiences and how they continue to work through that process can help a lot of people to move forward. So to kick off the show today, I'm going to just drop some questions in there. We're going to have a panel discussion. All the ladies are going to be able to share their heart, but we really want to get to some solutions. So the first question that I'm going to say to just, first of all, let me just say welcome, ladies, to Disruptive Dialogue. I appreciate you all being here and being able to share your heart. Welcome.
All right, Thomas.
Now they're all there. Thank you, Walisha. All right, so Walisha, let me ask you this question. What is one of the ways we could begin to support women who've been impacted by the justice system? What is one of the ways we could begin to support women who've been impacted by the justice system?
I think the most important way to support women who are returning home or impacted by the justice system, particularly those who are returning home from prison, is to address the issues of trauma. We all have trauma, incarceration, whether serving 1 day, 10 years, or 50 years. But it's particularly traumatic for women because the system itself, to me, is not designed for women. And that is shown in a lot of different ways in the way women are handled, specifically by the male correction officers. And so I think addressing trauma is number one. And two is definitely restorative, the family restorative, building, rebuilding family reunification and stuff like that, but definitely trauma, because that's going to affect the family reunification. So
yeah, let's talk a little bit about when you said the system's not built for women. What do you mean by it's not built for women?
When I say that, I say women have particularly different needs than a man. Particularly, we are women, and there are things that women need that the system, I wouldn't even say the system is not equipped with doing. I think the system is basically a one-on system. I mean, everything, I'll start with the main basic things as far as the uniforms that they have you in. It's bad enough that they're recycled uniforms that somebody has probably worn 10 times before you got it. But men have different shaped bodies. Most of the time, men are just straight down, no hips, no stomach, no behind. So
6 o'clock.
Yeah. And that's not designed for women who have curves. Second part, and the most main part, is women have female needs that are not taken care of. And I say that particularly because reproductive justice, hygiene care, things like that. And this is even when you're in prisons that have female wardens or female correction officers. Everybody knows since the time of Eve that a woman has her monthly cycle. But in prison, I know when I was in there, you got a choice of either 3 tampons or 3 pads. And that is for the day. Most women can go through 6 to 8 tampons in one day. And if you are a heavy bleeder, you can go through 10 to 15 pads in a day. Yeah. And so there are certain needs that women have, particularly even when a woman is needing to be seen by a doctor. And that was particularly traumatic for women who are pregnant. Places are still shackling pregnant women. Georgia even passed a law and people are still shackling pregnant women. And I've seen in certain instances where dogs are treated better. They make sure they got comforted beds and plenty of blankets to have their puppies with, but women are shackled. And so women just have different particular needs. You know, they're denied going to the doctor, or if they say they need to be seen, it's just different for women. And they don't understand that even though men are very, very important in the life of a child, 80% of today's children are raised by single mothers. And when you've taken that mother from her kids to be used at many different times, she's denied phone calls, she's denied visitation. If at any point in time she denies any type of sexual advances from the guards that are watching her, they'll throw her in solitary confinement. They'll take her phone calls. They'll take her visitation from her children. And it's bad enough when you're already in prison and you can't monitor homework. You can't check on what they're doing at school. You can't do that. So being able to talk to them and visit them is a lifeline. And so women have a very different and particular need than men. When men are in there, you know, you basically need to be teaching them some kind of skill so when they get out, they can work. But as opposed to women, we need to be able to have that maternal connection that we need to be able to maintain. That's why it's critical that they have daycares or places like that during visitation where children are able to play and bond and have touch visitation. I think men are perfectly fine talking to a glass on a phone, but a woman needs to be able to touch her kids and hold her kids during visitation. And so I think those are a lot of different things that affected me while I was there that I could not do with my kids. And I'm sure it affects a lot of women.
Yeah, it sounds like
Just
that
to add on to what Alicia, I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, it sounds like the system does not even consider dignity when it comes to a woman. That's terrible. That's something that needs to be addressed. Go ahead, Jesse.
Well, just to add on to what Walisha was saying, even our diet is different. You can't give us bread and carbs all day long and expect our bodies to not be affected drastically by that. And you're constantly giving us processed foods and carbs. We can't function that way. If we're going to be healthy and maintain some type of healthy appearance when we leave, we need to maintain a healthy diet while we're there. So you have these dietitians coming in telling you to do this and that. You can't even get the foods that you need as a woman in order to maintain a healthy status. It's not possible. And she's right. When you're dealing with guards, they're not addressing you. They're still being demeaning and degrading towards you. So if you're telling me to go to this class where I'm to build myself up and then I walk out and I'm still treated like a bug under somebody's shoe, it's kind of hypocritical. And yet you expect us to get better and to thrive once we leave this environment when it's consistently designed to put us down and to hold us down by any means necessary.
Yeah. Lucretia, so Walisha talked about how sometimes the mothers and the children, how they're impacted because the single mother is incarcerated and the children are impacted. Can you speak a little bit about your experience on what ways that we can, that you've seen that help with solutions for that side of it, where you're a child who's been impacted by the justice system because your mother was incarcerated, but there are some issues that you had in the beginning, but some solutions that you felt in your life also?
Thank you, Thomas. From a child's standpoint, I was lucky enough to have my grandparents. Most people do not have grandparents to raise them while the parents incarcerated. My mother was incarcerated for 5 years. And back in the day, she was arrested back in 1983. We was able to send packages, the things that everyone was mentioning, like, you know, tampons and maxi pads and things of that nature. But time has changed because people was putting in, you know, contraband items, unfortunately, and it had put a damper on everybody in visitation, men and women. I have definitely seen a change in the prison system because I was part of the Forever Family organization, where we provide free opportunities for youth whose parents are incarcerated for the family visitation program. So that program was started 30 years ago, and we are all in all the women prison, and we provide free transportation for the families. They don't have to pay for anything. We pick the kids up from the home, take the kids to see their mom every second Saturday of the month. And unfortunately, with COVID, things have changed because for 2 years, the kids have not been able to see their mom. So, for my mom being incarcerated from 1983 to 1993, that was, like I said, it was different. I'm sorry, 1986 to 1993, things were different back then. So things have definitely changed. We didn't have video interviews like they have now. We had to write letters, had a lot of stamps, a lot of collect phone calls. But like I said, I was raised by my grandparents, and so that was my mom's parents. They was able to keep in communication with my mom the entire time she was incarcerated. And like I said, we was able to send her care packages all year long. She was never without. She even blessed other inmates who was in there as well. Just to see the change now is really detrimental, because we have parents now telling us some things that had happened. I even had one of the parents died in there. She had cancer and she wasn't getting the services she needed, health wise. And so her family was unable to go to the hospital to see her. And by the time they did take her to the hospital, she died. And so that was detrimental for her and for the family and her children, because even though they was adults, they still didn't get to see their mom before she passed away, and her grandchildren. So it's definitely when I was hearing everybody talking about like the clothes and shackled to the bed, that is ridiculous, total ridiculous, and it's inhumane. I hate that. I don't like that, and definitely ready to help out and make a change with the justice system, because it's not right. It's not fair.
Yeah. Yeah. So Daphne, go ahead. I was going to ask
I
you.
was gonna say, and good evening, everyone. Afternoon. I served my time in federal prison, so it was a little bit different, but not better. As far as like we were talking about the uh, care packages and the issuance of the tampons and stuff like that, they did issue those there, but then what you ended up having with that was hoarding, because I was an orderly that was responsible for making sure we had everything maintained on our unit and everything. And so if you put out a box within like an hour or so, they were all gone. And then, once that supply for that week is gone, then, that was it until we got supplies for the next week, which we got supplies on Wednesdays. But our other issue is things were on commissary that you could buy in the federal, but things were marked up 300%. I mean, a bottle of Dove body wash that you would go here to Dollar General, Family Dollar, and pay $3 for, you were paying $12 for it. And so, who has that kind of money when the jobs that they give you when you're in there, you making 10 cents a day? It's no way that even you can even have enough money to pay for the 300 minutes that they give you to make phone calls home, much long buy anything on commissary with. So, you have a lot of people who already don't have anything to where it's no money coming in and you can't afford what's on commissary. To tackle what Jesse was saying about nutrition, I worked in the kitchen for a period of time. Nutrition was not good. It was filled with carbs, and the meats that they had, some of them I was told had been in the freezer 12-15 years, and it was like, hey, it was froze, so hey, you pull it out, you do what you can do with it. So that was unhealthy. So a solution that I did myself personally while I was in there, with my background in healthcare, I used to teach health and nutrition and women's health, because it was important to me for our women to know their numbers, know about blood pressure, knowing about alternatives that we could use there when we're buying stuff off of commissary, and just actually, getting them familiar that, how we could make some of the things a little bit better than, what we were getting. And my class always stayed full. Even at one point, I went to the camp administrator. I got called there just because I told one person that they had tell the nurse that to check your ears because you washed your hair the day before and water may be trapped in your ear. I got in trouble. They said I was prescribing and I was practicing medicine. And I'm like, no, I'm like, that's just common sense. If you wash your hair the day before and you got an earache the next day, check your ear because it may be water in there. And the young lady didn't mean any harm. She just went to the nurse practitioner and said, hey, Miss Daphne said to check my ear because I may have water in it. And, with that nurse practitioner knowing my background, she went and said, oh, I'm around here. I was around there practicing medicine. And so I told the camp administrator, I said, well, do you want me to stop teaching the women's health and health nutrition classes? Because I do give advice in the classes based on the curriculum that I made that you all approved for me to teach, And she was like, no, because if not, they weren't going to provide anyone to teach this stuff, And but yes, knowing their numbers, I made sure they knew highs and lows on A1C, which controls your blood sugar, your cholesterol, your numbers for your blood pressure. I made sure that every woman knew their numbers. So when they did get their blood work and lab work and everything done, they had a basis of, okay, what it would be. What they need to look for just to safeguard themselves. I always believe even on the outside, patients need to know their numbers and know what they're looking for. So when they go to a physician, they are able to not be blindsided and not be told anything.
Yeah. Well, Alicia, go ahead.
Just had a quick comment. I was going to say, and I was laughing about it, but I realized it could have been a roach in the ear too. Because they do that in the prison. I am going to say that one of the things that you had mentioned, for one, and I know it may be something that talks about a solution at the end, but personally, I feel that when you take it upon yourself as a burden to lock people up, it is your responsibility to take care of their every need.
Exactly.
You should not be putting out a box of tampons where there are up to 1,000 women in one facility. You know that if you know you cannot take care of a person with cancer, take them to go to their treatments. Or if you got somebody who needs what is that stuff, dialysis, and you can't take them to treatment, then somebody need to be saying, look, we cannot medically take care of these people. Right. And if you know that you have a woman, and every woman at the beginning, if they're of that age, should get one box of tampons, one box of pads. And that should be automatic across the board. Whether they do with them and they choose to plug them in their ears or whatever, this is what we're going to give you. That should be it. When the state takes on these responsibilities, no different than you taking in a child or you're getting a pet but don't want to walk them and don't want to change their diapers. It's the same thing. If you cannot take care of the needs of individuals who are sick, who are women, who are disabled, mentally ill, then you ought not to be bringing them into the prison. So for a woman, if you know for a fact that she has particular needs, you need to give them that. It's the same thing when you're bringing in these trans women or trans men and then getting in there and denying them the medication or the estrogen and things that they had on the street. According to the law, you're supposed to give them what they need medically, and that is what you're supposed to be having. There's nothing that says once you go into prison, we're no longer mothers and we're no longer sisters and we're no longer going to have a period. We are. Women need to be having different type of vitamins than men. You're giving out everything else. Every woman in there should be given a 1-a-day woman's vitamin. Women need special vitamin K for certain things. We need things for our eyes. We need different type of things. And that should be automatic. Okay, we got a woman in here. She's going to require this. Are y'all able to take care of her? If not, we need to be trying to find some alternative sentencing. And if going to prison or incarceration is even the first result, and it's not, and that's part of the problem. Georgia gets over $25,000 for each individual in the state. So they have money. I don't know about you and your 10 cents a day, but in Georgia, people are not paid any money. There's one facility that does pay women, I think $1.50 or $2 or something a day. And then out of that, they have to take care of half of that to pay for their own lunch and room and board. This ain't no room and board college. I'm in prison. So when you're in prison, we should not be having to pay for medical care. Folks are going to the doctor's offices or the doctor visits, which are $5 to $7. You may have, especially as an overweight woman like I was, who had back issues and all kind of blood medicine. I was on depression medication. You could rent up $20 to $30 in 1 month just in medical visit. But when somebody sends you $40, they want to take their $30 off the top for your medical. So automatically, when you bring somebody into the prison system, their medical visit to the in-prison doctor should be paid in full. There should be no commissary unless it's something extra. You should get a bar of soap. You should get your toothbrush. You should get your toothpaste. All of that stuff in a basic package. Now, we're going to give you some plain tater chips, but if you want Doritos, you got to buy them for the commissary. But there are certain things that should automatically be given to you for free, because that's what the taxpayers are paying for. And
well, we know this is
included.
We know this is about the money, and if they can skimp somewhere and make some more money, there's that aspect of it. Lisa, you were not impacted by incarceration, but you were in a part of another system, and that system, does it sound similar to the same things that you're hearing here within being housing challenged?
I would say it's as like traumatic as what some of the women here experience, but it can be a very traumatic experience. Mine was chronic homelessness. So being in and out of shelters, and we can talk about like staff, like they was talking about in the different facilities, just like in the prison, they really don't care about you. Most people are there for the paycheck. And you're treated like a number or just some paperwork in a file and different things like that. So it's really not set up for your benefit or to assist you in any type of way. Some of the experiences that I've had, dealing with homelessness and dealing with that particular system, it really wasn't set up for the benefit of those there, especially when you're dealing with the different case managers and the different type of things that you have to go through. Is like you're like a herd of cattle, so to speak. You're here, let's get it done. It's not my fault that you're homeless. Like, I'm quite sure people working facilities, the prison facilities, not my fault that you're here. I'm just here for my paycheck, and that's that. So, and we're talking about traumatic experience, and that makes it even more traumatic when you come to a place that you're supposed to be helped or you're supposed to be rehabilitated and different things like that, and you're not, and you leave worse than when you came in. It's like a cycle that's really created because I wasn't helped when I was in the situation, and now that I'm out, where do I go from here? So you end up falling back into the same cycle, whatever that cycle is, and you keep finding yourself back in a place where you don't necessarily want to be. And I was while listening to the ladies, it's like we're fighting against and for, fighting against the system, but fighting for the people that are in that system. And when we talk about coming out of the system and how do we help the people, the individuals that are coming out, regardless of what system that is, it really has to start within the system. Yeah. So I'm quite sure women that went to prison didn't even suffer the level of trauma that they're suffering within the prison from whatever it caused them to go in there. So when you come out, it's like, where do you go from here and how do I get to that place? And if you don't know how to get to the next place, you're always stuck. And I knew I was always stuck in a certain position because you just have people that really just don't care. Like once in a while, you'll come across people that really have your best interest at heart, but that's only once in a while.
Right.
So it's like you're really suffering.
Lisa made a good point about the trauma that suffered while you're incarcerated. Dina, you shared a lot about your trauma prior to incarceration, and you also share a little bit about your story while being incarcerated. But tell us about some of the things that you've experienced, the traumas that you experienced inside incarceration, and what are some of the ways that you thought about providing solutions for the trauma that ladies were facing where you were at?
Well, one of the things was to try to keep a connection going with their children. That was something that was big for me. So I was mentoring the ladies that was incarcerated kids while they were on visitation. And the thing was to sort of kind of be that bridge between that mother and that child's emotional distress that they were in caused by the separation, because the trauma that I experienced caused me to suffer from social anxieties, of course, but the abandonment and the rejection, that those feelings that come up is from that incident, that significant incident in my life. So these kids are suffering the same thing. And when I was listening to the lady speak, I thought about how the data drives us to do certain things, and we create these mission statements, and our work is going to be centered around our missions. And so corrections per se, homelessness per se, what are the missions of these institutions and that are there, and are we really allowing the mission to drive what it is that we do? Because if so, then we wouldn't add on the unnecessary stress and trauma to the individuals that are already being punished for whatever it is they did. That's not who they are. And so it's not like that. It is because a person is incarcerated, which comes with another negative stigma, which creates another thought process, which actions come from that thought process. And not that these persons are here in our care, as Walisha was speaking to, whereas because states are allocated so much monies for individuals that are incarcerated, meaning that whatever the necessary everyday basic needs have to be met, but it's met by the state. And the state allocates this money to the prison system in order for that to happen for their residents that's in the state that just so happen to be incarcerated per se, but that's not how it is. And so we're dealing with the women, their children, and being that bridge and that mediator between the conversations that have to be had, as women are still trying to co-parent with the caregiver and with the separation that they're having. So they're trying to still be mom while they're in there, and they're losing ground because, for one, like they say, you don't get to talk to them, you don't get to see, touch, and hold them, and to actually help them work through some of the emotional challenges that they're having, which of course comes out in disruptive behavior that's inside of schools and all of this. And then the economic consequences of the families that are the caregivers, trying to take care of the kids and then trying to compete with the industrial complex of prison. Meaning, when I was incarcerated, I got there 20 years ago. So phone calls for 15 minutes was like $8 to $10. So it's like, and I had to talk real fast too, you know. And so even now being home 10 years later, and I'm just thinking right now, even being home 10 years later, they have these tablets that they're giving everyone because now we're doing a new thing with monies, whereas still penalizes the family nevertheless. But now we got these tablets that you can actually watch movies on. So now the TV is taken in, and it's just another way of cycling through and getting monies for individuals that are incarcerated. Yeah. So,
You know, when I think about
that I was saying was that the children are definitely trying to make sure the families and the mothers and children even started a Me and Mom's Day that actually goes on to this day at the Work Release Center here in Birmingham, where they have a fun day with their parent outside of the incarceral setting. Moonwalks, food, barbecues, all of the birthdays, holidays that you could think of that you missed, you know, and they have a whole yard full of just that. And they don't have to worry about lockdown for count and screaming and hollering and all this kind of stuff. They're actually outside all day with their parents. So that's what I have.
So, you know, when I think about everything that everyone has shared, as a male who's gone through incarceration and through a system, there is definitely a difference. I notice there's a difference in the way that, you know, I do my time. You know, it's hard on everybody. It's traumatic for everybody. But for the added trauma that I'm listening to you all share, that going through any system, there's added trauma for a woman because the connections that you have. Someone mentioned that for a man, it's probably easy for us to talk through a glass or on a phone. I know for me, I didn't have much contact when I was locked up, and, you know, it was just the way it is. I think it would have been a lot different for you all. So does anyone have a suggestion on how we can continue to bridge the gap between families? Because we know that the trauma that you feel while you're incarcerated is also the trauma that the children feel while you're doing your incarceration. It's been said many times that when you're doing time, everybody around you is doing time. And so what are some of the ways that we can bridge these gaps? And what are some of the things that you know of right now that are in place? I know Lucretia talked about, is it Families First or Forever Family? Forever Family, I believe it was. And then, so Jesse, what do you think? Yep. Jesse, what's some of the ways that we can bridge these gaps?
I'm from Ohio, and in Ohio, it's very family oriented. So the main thing we have to do is to remember that that child's needs have to be met. That child did not do anything. So you have to meet that child's needs. The first thing you have to do is make a line of communication for that child. In Ohio, we have what we call mom and kids days at the prisons. So the child gets to come in, spend the entire day, their activities for the family to do the entire day. And it happens every single. Then you also have, if you're part of Girl Scouts that comes in, and then you have a program for the boys and their moms as well. But this should be something that's automatic. It should go beyond that. There should be something in place where you take retired social workers or case managers and you allow them to help that child to adapt to this new normal. Be it give them an environment where they're amongst their peers, where they don't feel like they're singled out, the only child going through that, where they can communicate what's going on with them to their peers. And at the same time, give them an environment where they can communicate with their mom, even if it's via letters or activities that they do that their mom receives, and then the child receives a response to it. There needs to be an active participation between some outside organization and the child, so that that child has some type of connection to the parent. I left my child at the age of 11. And had it not been for my strong family, and thank God I was in Ohio, I don't know what I would have done, because I would not have had the ability to connect with my child in that new normal, in a way that she could thrive through it. Not survive, but thrive through it. We're not meeting the needs of that child that is left behind. We're leaving too many of them behind, and then expecting the mother, when she finally does get out, to just automatically be able to pick up the pieces. There's no one in place as that middle person. They say it takes a village to raise a child. Somebody tell me where the village is at.
Yeah. That's deep. Let me talk about one thing that we can wrap around everything that we're talking about, social injustice. What makes you on fire about when you hear social injustice, and what drives you to the work that you do, and how we're making solutions? And Walisha, I know that you are a big social justice voice in the Atlanta community, Columbus community, and everywhere you've been. So, we may want to talk about that. And then Daphne, I want to come back to you about your comments on what you think about these things.
So repeat the question again, Thomas.
Yeah. So when it comes to the injustice that you see, the social injustice that you see that's driving a lot of the things we're talking about right now, driving the prison industrial complex, driving the prison, school to prison pipeline, the social injustices that we see, what do you feel are some solutions that you've been working on, that you have thought about, and ways that we can get behind to look at how we can solve these things from the cause aspect, not just the effect?
I think one of the biggest issues is, for one, we need to get out.
Tune in next week for the final episode of this series, Ladies First, Part 2, and get the answer.